I suggested the readings from Job and Matthew this past Monday in my email correspondence with Jeff. I had been musing on these passages for a while recently. Job is a non-Israelite. The woman in the Matthew passage is Canaanite. But these are not us compared to them or us versus them stories. The authors may be asking us to step outside our personal perspective and to widen our view beyond our immediate world and our zones of over-familiarity, that is, our comfort zones. What we all have in common, no matter what our background and various views about the world are, we all share in some kind of suffering, some kind of grief, and most of us hold in our minds and bodies some aspect of trauma. This story of Job, the scene is set in Uz. Do you know where Uz is? You would have a better chance of finding Oz on a map. Uz is a fictitious place. The author of Job does not define an historical setting with time marker events such as after or before the Babylonian exile, or with a sentence such as, in the days after the death of King Uzziah, such and such came to pass. This allegory is meant to invite us to be witnesses on a journey of suffering and to consider how we might respond if we were in Job's position. As witnesses to Job's suffering, we enter also the role of the allies who join him in a period of silent compassion and then engage in active dialogue with him. We, as observers, become reparative witnesses. Can you imagine someone coming to inform you that all your possessions and the people you love dearly have been swept away, killed, or destroyed and displaced by some tragic means? Perhaps some of us have experienced some depth of similar misfortune. I have. The possessions were not such a big deal to me. I miss, most of all, the pictures of family members and mementos of friendships in the form of a little music box with a picture of my best friend and me on it, an engraved marble paperweight, or a praying cross designed to fit snugly in a closed palm. I emailed a few institutions to see if I could get replacement copies of diplomas and various certificates, and I can for a fee. The charcoal gray zip-up sweater, like the kind Mr. Rogers used to wear, that I bought while in Vatican City last year, is gone. I'm going to have to buy all new winter clothes, but then my most recent winter jacket was purchased in 2019, and it is time for something new anyway. Well, that is an account of some of the stuff, and there was more stuff, but I don't have access any longer to any of that stuff. Grief? No. I did not experience grief as much as inconvenience, and I can live with a little of that. Freedom, mobility, that is more of what I felt. It was much easier to move to a new place recently with only 2 suitcases and a backpack. Separate from that incident, I have lost people I love. This is where I connect most with Job's saga. Soon to be 1 year ago, My first piano teacher from when I was an impressionable 8-year-old died while living out her final days in a wretched care facility in Ohio. She was one of my first mentors, and I learned how to play liturgical music from her example. She lauded my musical accomplishments through these past several decades, and every Christmas card and voicemail ended with, "You know who loves you." My first boyfriend from when I was 19 died several years ago, aged 55, from a lung condition. His lungs were always delicate from having been born premature. When I was 9 years old, I found my first real friend, the little girl from across the street, Cheryl. We grew up together, and her parents called me son. Cheryl died in 2022 from a weakened heart. In all cases, their pathways through life were rough, much rougher than mine, but they always held on to optimism and hope for the future. They still encourage me toward optimism. Do I see these untimely deaths as God taking the good ones early? Yes, I can align with that. And there are many others who have died, and I'm at an age now where that becomes a common occurrence. For each of those individuals, and for many of my friends who are still alive and kicking, I have had reciprocal exchanges with them as my dialogue partners, like the friends of Job who come to sit with him in silence and then work out Job's issues in poetic conversation. With my friends, we talk about the disorder of our lives and the wish for at least ordered chaos over disordered chaos. We talk about facing and overcoming danger as we reflect about and respond to world events. And we talk about the divine and the role of the divine in all this disorder and danger. The interpretation of the divine is somewhat different for each of us. Some call it God. Some call it a higher power. Some refer to it as whatever is out there watching over us. Disorder, danger, and the divine always seem to be in constant motion. And with my love of linguistics, and especially features in language such as alliteration, disorder, danger, and the divine commingle to test our tenacity. Tests of tenacity. Tenacity, how much can we take? The answer always seems to be, well, we're about to find out. Job sits in silence for a week with 3 friends who all mourn with Job for the devastation that has befallen him. He eventually enters into a poetic dialogue with these 3 friends. So, what is your experience of suffering, and who are your dialogue partners? For us, when we have a traumatic experience, do we assemble with close friends and sit in silence for a week? I don't think so. We may sit for a few moments of silence, but then we begin to share the bad news, the reasons, the assumptions, and all the details of what happened. And our friends seek clarification or express astonishment. They might attempt to comfort us or give us advice. We try to sort out things together. And thank God for friends, especially in our times of disorder, when it seems we are being tested for tenacity. Other times we may isolate in our suffering and grief, and we play over and over again in our minds the events of our suffering or personal tragedy. We experience a trauma reenactment. The trauma is still alive and active in our psyche. We may fall into a repetition, compulsion, reliving each moment of grief or regret, and we can get stuck in a cycle, a downward mental spiral. Talking it out may help with friends or with a therapist, but then Just give yourself enough time alone with your own thoughts, and the repetition compulsion once again overtakes the mind. This is because the trauma, the grief, the regret, the despair is held in the body. It is, of course, in the mind, but it may manifest in other parts of the body, as in the form of a migraine, or joint pain, or stomach aches. I am sure you could all tell me where you feel it, and we might understand each other and what each of us is going through. Trauma brings about the sensation that we are at the end of the road, and in that state, we often cannot conceive the notion of healing. So I invite us to enter the world of Job as we are gathered in this room. We can offer each other a moment of quiet understanding. At least as a start toward our own healing. In the book of Job, the beginning, right before the passage that was read today, up in the heavenly realm, the accuser, the Satan, and God discuss God's faithful, upright figure, Job, and the Satan challenges God that Job is only faithful because God bestows blessings. They come to an agreement where God allows the Satan to inflict suffering on Job to see how Job reacts and if his faith is truly steadfast. Does Harold Kushner's book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People, come to mind? Even if you have not read it, you probably have heard the title or mused on that intent. For the trauma or disorder in your own life, have you posited the question, why is this happening to me? Are you addressing God, the universe, the ether, or some other notion of a higher power? When we examine Job's suffering, we ponder such questions as, is God just? Does God run the universe on the strict principle of justice? And how is Job's suffering, or my own suffering, to be explained? And if it is in fact explained to us, laid out clearly even, is it justified? Disorder and danger exist in the world governed by the divine. And what is the better route to take? Wrestle with the reason for suffering? Trust the wisdom of the divine when facing suffering? What about summoning the courage from within to speak up for yourself? The Canaanite woman in Matthew and the parallel story of the Syro-Phoenician woman in Mark reveal Jesus' response to people of great faith. Jesus seems to dismiss these suffering women when they request his assistance, claiming that his mission is to serve the house of Israel first. Is he dismissing them, or is he administering a test of tenacity? When we face dismissal in our lives, is our first thought something as follows: oh, this must be a test of tenacity. Let me reflect on that for a while in silence and then sort it out with my friends? No, we want justice right now. I encounter tests of tenacity all the time. I am being tested to see if I will persevere. Having to prove my worthiness and claim my self-worth again and again becomes tiresome and draining. Do you agree? I called Chase Bank recently to ask them why the limit on Zelle payments shifted from a higher limit to a lower limit for one particular recipient. Chase told me to contact Zelle. I called Zelle. Zelle told me to contact Chase. In calling either Chase or Zelle, I meandered through their automated systems that are designed to fend off complaints and to temper inquiries. Nobody seems to be in the business of customer service anymore, and I always feel as if I am being tested for tenacity. In sharing these thoughts with you, I have begun to embody the issues of Job and his friends, of Jesus and the women seeking his assistance, and I have begun to embody my own issues. From my training in drama therapy, specifically what is known as bibliodrama, because today I am anchoring my process in Scripture, this embodiment helps me to physicalize my grief, my pain, my troubled inquiry, and this contributes to my healing. I think I might find some relief from disorder and danger, disappointment, and gain some help from the divine. And all of you help to make up that essence of the divine as reparative witnesses to my story. Thank you for sitting with me and simply listening. And thank you, my future dialogue partners.